Welcome to the Accelerate Campfire. I'm Lyndon Bowen, and today I'm joined by an amazing entrepreneur. I truly hope you enjoy hearing their experiences and life path. Listen in. So we have the first question from the audience. Thank you guys for voting. So the first question is, how did where you grew up influence you? You talked about a lot about volunteering in 4-H from a very young age.
Mhm.
How did where you grow up influence you today?
So I grew up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So if you're not familiar, that is that weird chunk that's attached to Wisconsin and like Minnesota and Canada. So it's way north. I grew up on 120 acres, and my nearest neighbor was a quarter mile away. Um, I, I think this rural mindset really forces you to be entrepreneurial and think about multiple revenue sources.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad did stained glass. So, and he didn't intend to like have a business. He just always was curious. He was an electrician by trade and was always really curious about stained glass. So, took a class, loved it, bought a bunch of supplies, then started a business. And it became clear to my family, I'm the youngest, and it was, I was told I had to go to college and I had to pay for it. And so once my dad started doing that when I was like 11 or 12 or something, it was like, like you could do this and this could be your job. So then you wouldn't have to work like a crappy retail job like your brother and sister did. So I think that like rural mindset of like hustle, I think is a big part of it. Super, super influenced becoming a small business owner.
And I'm gonna give a bit of your background for folks that haven't had the amazing pleasure of like really talking with you day in and day out here in the Accelerate community. Guys, Alyssa is the founder and chief artisan of two small businesses. Yes, you heard me right, two, exactly two, possibly more in the future. We have Bricktown Poppy Glass, and she's also the founder and chief artisan of Poppy Designs. She's an accomplished glass artisan. Alyssa started Bricktown Glass over a decade ago to sell and showcase her work through galleries. From her homegrown Michigan studio, she has accomplished many successful and esteemed art shows, including ArtPrize just this past year in Grand Rapids, Michigan. 2 years ago, she also started her side hustle, Poppy Designs, a graphic design and content management business that has taken off financially and is growing by word of mouth. She's using this to impact members of her community on a day-to-day basis. Since then, Alyssa has become an outspoken advocate for entrepreneurs, dedicating her time to inspire and impact others. She has contributed tirelessly here and Accelerate day in and day out. She's actually a what I would call a true game changer, harnessing the power of small businesses into a mighty force. So, Alyssa, again, just warm round of applause for Alyssa, please, guys. Thank you, Alyssa, also so very much for being a great member of this community.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love it. I've had, I got started with EA in the spring when Leslie sent me like a random text message, like, "Hey, do you want to get involved in this thing that I'm doing at work?" And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And thinking, I kind of felt like I started it as like, "Oh, Leslie needs help," and I love Leslie.
Mm,
And it really has evolved and super evolved how I my businesses
mm.
and has given me so much confidence and just to be able to chat with people who really get it in like a really real way, even if all of our businesses are super different. Being a part of EA has been super beneficial to me.
I think that like I've grown day in and day out, like having conversations with you here in the community.
Mhm.
What's one moment that you'd say that like members in the community have like impacted you from a business owner perspective?
Yeah, I did a Eureka before ArtPrize started. So I had a very specific question how I was approaching social media and ArtPrize because there was this really big like gaming gamified component of ArtPrize this year.
Mhm.
And I went into it thinking like I'm going to go viral on TikTok because that's so easy. It's absolutely not easy to do that. And I'm also a millennial, so this stuff does not come naturally to me. And I did this Eureka and I came out of it with like my heart and my home needs to be Instagram Reels. And that was absolutely accurate. It really genuinely was. And it changed like how I was approaching it because I understood Instagram a lot more than TikTok. I mean, I'm still on TikTok, but I know I'm not gonna I don't anticipate going viral on TikTok. So, I just get to Instagram a lot more. And that, you know, when I won a prize at ArtPrize, I've been able to sell almost all of the clocks that I had on exhibit there. So that Eureka was amazing. And it really like narrowed my focus of trying to master a whole new social media platform 2 weeks before an event.
That's a
That is
large
just not really
ordeal.
possible. Yeah.
I think that like what's really important for entrepreneurs, like the ability to adapt and move. And,
Mhm.
and what you're mentioning there is like, you weren't fully like accustomed to the space of TikTok, right? But you
Mhm.
realized that you had a competitive advantage when it came to Instagram. So you decided
Mhm.
to look towards that versus like trying to just follow where the hype
Yeah,
is going.
exactly.
Um, kind of digging a little bit more into your background. We actually have the second poll here for you guys in the chat as well. Feel free to vote on that while I ask Alyssa this follow up question. Um, so like, what was your first business? Like, did you start off in glass? Like, what did that kind of like transition look like for you?
Yeah, I was actually thinking of my answer to today's topic. And I was like, I wanted to kind of like ask me this during the campfire. So like I said, my dad started doing stained glass and I tried, and I have absolutely no patience for how technically accurate stained glass needs to be in order to have
Mhm.
very good stained glass products. So I tried that for a second. It was terrible. I hated it. Then I started making mosaic style stepping stones, and I was
Mm.
pretty good at that, but no one bought them. I did a couple shows with my dad,
Yeah.
and no one bought them. So it was like, okay, cool. So that's not good. And then it was really glass. It was my fused glass, which is different than mosaics. It's different than stained glass. It's also different than blown glass.
Hmm.
Fused glass is melting glass in a kiln. And so we toured the Spectrum Glass Factory in Woodinville, Washington, out west. And our tour guide did fused glass, and prior to that, I had never heard of it. So it was really like, hey, what is this? And then it was like, hey, I don't need to be nearly as technically perfect like I do with stained glass. It's a lot of it's very functional,
Hmm.
and so it makes you have a broader audience. So that was really helpful for me. And my parents were willing to like make that investment in me. And I feel like I'm gonna answer the next question now. Sorry. Because I see the first thing you bought for your company. So sorry, Lyndon.
Yeah, go for it.
uh,
Go for it.
my parents, how we did it is they bought me a kiln. They bought me all the glass that I needed because it is a different type of glass than stained
Hmm.
glass. And it took me 7 years to pay them back because
Wow.
I was also like saving money to go to college.
How
So,
much is a kiln? Like, how much was that investment? That initial investment?
so the kiln itself was about $2,000, and then probably another like $3,000 to $4,000 in like glass and other tools and like accessory glass that is
Mhm.
unique to fused glass art. So it took me like 7 years. What we did is they would just keep 50% of my sales.
Oh,
And
wow.
at the time I was in high school, I started when I was
Business parents.
yeah, yeah. So, I was 14 when I started, so I was still in, like, middle school and high school, so it took me a while to pay them back, but I was able to, and then, I was able to also pay for all of my college tuition without taking out any student loans, with doing glass.
And like, could you that first of all, that's absolutely amazing. Second of all, I think that the perspective that you approach it from is really interesting, right? Like
Mhm.
usually when people talk about art, there's like this really, really bad misconception, like, oh, art doesn't pay, art doesn't make money, like art isn't a hard skill. Like
Mhm.
what did you have to do internally, right, to really give yourself the confidence to step out and follow your passion, like making glass, right? Which is so niche and amazing. Like
Yeah.
what did that look like internally?
Yeah, I love this. So I went to school for marketing. My degree is in marketing, and I genuinely, at the core, believe a starving artist is someone who doesn't understand accounting. Um,
Mm,
like
snaps. I need to write
it
that down.
really, I think it's that simple. I think they don't know what their supplies cost. They don't know how long it takes them to do a piece, and they haven't figured out any ways to streamline the process. And I get it; you're not gonna be able to do that with all art forms, but you can with a lot. And if you don't take advantage of like how the Ford assembly plant has operated, right?
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah.
assembly line, you are forcing yourself to spend so much more time on a piece that it could be streamlined and you could produce 12 items instead of just one item a day. Like I do everything on an assembly line, so I make at
Yeah.
least like 6 or 7, if not like 20 of the same thing at a time. If I was doing one item start to finish, I would only do like 3 a day, and that's just not efficient. It's not efficient when you're running an electric kiln that is large. You know, you got to fill
Costs
it up.
money to run.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like there are business owners um that have come before us that really like take their wisdom, even if you know we're not making vehicles over here, but we are making something that can be streamlined. So I think accounting is like the thing with a starving artist, but then also you know, 4-H is my heart. It really
Mhm.
is. My first tattoo is actually my initials behind my ear. I had a 4-H leader whose name was Annette Diedick, who she was a painter, and that was her full-time job. She was a painter. She ended up having breast cancer and passing away, but she was the biggest influence on my life, that this
Yeah.
is a possible thing. This is a an actual career path,
Mhm.
despite people in high school saying be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a teacher. You have to go to college. You have to do all this, like blah 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 blah. And that was just not where my brain was going to lead. And so
Mhm.
having the influence of Annette, a working artist, was invaluable to me at such a young age and for most of my life. I mean, amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think.
Ziz,
Oh yeah.
uh,
Go ahead.
like
Yeah.
all my teachers, like I feel like all teachers said,
Guidance
like,
counselors.
yeah, guidance counselors
Yeah.
were like, you have to do these things. These are like probably these are the jobs that like you should be going for, and everything else is terrible.
I mean, I think that's really interesting. Like, it's crazy how people like that can have such a large impact, like on your life at such an early age, like and send you
Mhm.
down totally different paths, right?
Mhm.
um, how do you balance? Like, you're mentioning productivity, you're mentioning developing a streamlined process with creating your art. I feel like sometimes there's kind of like this dissonance, as an artist myself. Like, I feel like, oh my god, I can't make this too streamlined because if I feel like I take away from the artistic process. I know we have a lot of other artists here. Da Cypher is one of the artists that I know is here in the chat with us. Justine's also an artist herself.
Mhm.
What does it look like balancing that productivity with the artistic creation?
It's really hard, and it's easily one of the hardest things to like mentally cope with, I think, as an artist. But I will say going to business school kind of worked it out of my brain a little bit, and I know like bottom line really matters quite a bit when I want to do this as my career. But for me, how I like literally like balance this is I have my work in 7 galleries across the state. And I know very much like what sells at these galleries. You know, in Rogers City, where it's right on the water, a lot of blue stuff sells. You know, people
Mm-hmm.
aren't necessarily buying stuff in touristy locations that say, I was in Rogers City, Michigan. They're buying art that reminds them of the water when they were there. I don't particularly like the color blue, but I know that it sells.
Yeah.
So I do stuff that I know will like pay the bills. But
Mm-hmm.
then conversely, I really seek out these solo exhibitions. I've had 5 solo exhibitions, and then I did ArtPrize this year. And those endeavors are where I really push myself creatively to try something new, work on a new design, and I really allow myself to like not have a streamlined assembly line process because I got to figure out what's going to work
Yeah.
and things like that. So I allow myself to really like creatively explore during those kind of creative explorations, but then I over time I have figured out like, okay, this is an amazing thing that I started on a solo exhibition. How do I make this into a streamlined process to then bring into my regular product offering? So I use these bigger opportunities to explore, and then I transfer it over to my regular product offerings over time.
I mean, so I want to just a bit of housekeeping. I want to say there's another poll here in the chat, guys. Feel free to vote on the next question. I have a bit of a following up question for Alyssa. Also, feel free to drop a question if you have one that you want to ask her into the chat as well while we're having a conversation. Um, Alyssa, that's interesting, right? You're using these exhibitions really as to subsidize your like finding your product fit, right? I
Mm-hmm.
know like in the software world, in the business world, people over talk so much about product fit. I don't feel like
Mm-hmm.
the conversation is had enough when it comes to like the artistic world, like how you find a
Mm-hmm.
product fit. Um, like what's your kind of like heuristic or advice to people who are artists or creatives trying to find like their product fit for their creation?
I think seeking feedback from as many people who are not you, um, is really, really important. I think it's super important to talk to non-artists, talk to people who have maybe even openly said that they hate your work.
Wow.
Um, Things like that. I think that's fine. Um, I have an amazingly supportive brother family, but my brother has been like kind of critical of my work and like seeing other artists and like Alyssa, you could spend way more detail and blah blah blah. Like, don't just throw stuff together. And that was like this nagging thought in the back of my head for a long time. And now I do more detail stuff. It took, a decade for him to pound it in my head. But that's good. So I think it's important to have like haters weigh in a little bit, but like trusted haters, like your family, your friend circle, things like that. I think that's a great benefit of social media, really. Asking people like crowdsource ideas. I've done it with in the political world with Poppy Designs. We've done it for like if one of my candidates has had a headshot photo shoot and myself and the candidate cannot agree on which one's better, A or B, we just post it on Facebook and
Wow.
let the people decide.
Let the people decide. The wisdom of the crowd.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was reading an interesting article the other day that that's like one of our advantages as people is like the ability to decide really quickly as a crowd, like come to a consensus that oh no, that's not cool.
Hmm.
um, but that's interesting. Like you're really harnessing your critics to like taking it with a grain of salt, but also listening to the advice and implementing positive things where you can. Um, I think a lot of people are resonating. Ziz and Steve are resonating with the ability to take criticism, which I think is a tremendously important trait.
I
Um,
think that's a really great point for, especially for people that are really like personally invested in their business.
mm,
It doesn't like criticism is fine and it's not a reflection of your value, especially as like a human, let alone as a business order or maker or creator in whatever field. It's just simply criticism. I've had galleries that really wanted my work and there was one in Brighton, for example, in Michigan, and they were like, we've tried glass in the past, but like this community really just buys ceramics, but your stuff is really different, so let's
mm,
try it. We tried it for 2 years, it didn't work. Oh well, I'm not offended. It just
yeah,
meant that they like ceramics. And funny enough, I have amazing ceramic pieces that I purchased at the store. So it's fine. Like
yeah, works out
I
win-win.
exactly. And
Yep,
oh well, I guess is kind of like we tried, we gave it our best effort. It didn't
yep,
work. See you later. No hard feelings.
yeah, nothing to lose.
Hmm.
Um, you know, we're getting close to this point here. Like we're talking about criticism, we're talking about weathering the storm. Yeah, this is talking about how athletes get feedback on their performance constantly during filming sessions.
Hmm.
Um, looking back on your performance so far as an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
um, like what would you say was your biggest mistake that you made along the way?
Um, I think my biggest mistake is I have gotten in a couple like uh relationships with people that made me feel small.
Mm,
And I allowed their input to matter. I gave it more value than it needed to have.
mm.
Hmm.
How did you navigate like out of those situations?
There's someone in the art world. So in Metro Detroit, there's this amazing program called the Kresge Art Fellowship. And it's only for the Tri County area, so Macomb, Wayne, and Oakland. And it is every other year, it goes for visual artists. So that was for me, that was in 2021. That was earlier this year, actually. And I decided about 2 years ago I was going to apply. And I told someone who I thought was a good friend in the art world that I was going to do this. And their immediate reaction was, "You're not that kind of artist. You're not going to get it." And that was someone who was supposed to be a friend, right?
Yep.
And that's not supportive. That's not a friend. And it's taken me 2 years to drop that person, but I have. So it genuinely, it can take a long time, but so I let that person really get in my head, and they don't deserve that space.
Hmm. Did that person like bring you to contemplate like giving up on your passion at all?
No, let's go back to me being a Taurus.
Yeah. Hmm.
I am hella stubborn and bullheaded, so absolutely not. I'm a dig my heels in more to
Okay,
prove the
love it.
wrong person. Now, in total honesty, I applied for Kresge this year. Over 900 people applied, only 10 people get this,
Hmm.
and I absolutely didn't even make it past round one.
Yeah.
But the process of applying for a Kresge Fellowship is huge. You have
Yes.
to write several essays about yourself. You have to write several short answer questions. You have to submit photos with huge captions. It was a huge journey just to apply. And
Hmm.
I genuinely learned absolutely so much. And what's really funny or just really interesting about applying to Kresge is they very clearly in their guidelines say this is not about your work in the community, this is about you as an artist. And
Hmm.
I realized I've lost sight of that. I lost sight of why I'm an artist, why I'm a creative person. And I focused so much on doing so much work in the community that I let my businesses come second or third or fourth even to a lot of this community work. And
Yeah.
that's where EA comes in of really like, you need to like, this is my heart. So go back to why you're in it in the first place.
And what? Why did you get into art in the first place?
I don't want a
Like, what was the
boss.
original
I mean,
reason?
that's a huge part of it. I don't want a boss. I'm good at it. I'm good at doing glass. I think that's like an important thing for me. Um, and I love, as much as I don't like love people, I do love people. I'm really always honored when someone buys something from me to give as a gift. I think that's a really special, like, it's an honor, really, because you're choosing to spend your money because what I created from my brain makes you think of this other person positively. And there's nothing more special than that, especially for like weddings and stuff.
Yeah.
I like there's no higher honor for me as an artist who makes a lot of functional work.
We actually have one of the final questions here from the audience. Also, guys, feel free to ask any other questions of Alyssa as well in the chat. What is some advice that you often give to entrepreneurs?
That's a good question. I feel like that I should like know that answer really easily. I feel like confidence can get you farther than skill
Mm,
in a lot of ways, in a
mm,
lot of worlds too, I think.
mm. Has that idiom like rung true in your life personally at any point?
Yeah, I think it's allowed me to speak so like robustly on the EA server and stuff
Hmm.
like this has worked for me and it goes back to the quote I shared yesterday. Like one of my favorite quotes is trust your story. I
Hmm.
think it's also like it's knowing that my story is valid because it is my story and I don't assume to know your story, but
Yeah.
your story is just as valid. So, like, having the confidence to trust myself is just huge. So it allows me to one of my solo shows, the one I'm most proud of, was at the Boniface Art Center in Escanaba in the UP. It's the art center that I grew up going to. And I was up there visiting my family, and I walked in and I talked to the director who I've known since I was a kid. And I said, "Listen, I want a solo show. I've had 3 elsewhere. I'm awesome. Like, I deserve this. I've been coming here for years. Like, I want one." And just saying, like, I want it. And they actually ended up having an artist cancel, and they called me the next day and said, "You have 3 months. Can you do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Thinking, I have no idea if I can do it. but I did it and it was absolutely amazing. So just having the confidence to walk into a room and say like, listen, I deserve this because I'm awesome. So
Hmm.
let's make this happen.
This has a question for you here in the chat. Also, ditto to that. I feel like that is something that sometimes the people who are most confident shouldn't be as confident. Maybe sometimes,
Totally.
they are.
In
But the people who are
politics,
like,
we
oh
call
well,
that
no, no, no.
failing up.
Yeah, right. um, Ziz asks, what story do you want to tell in 2022?
So that's a great question. I don't know what story. But I do want to what I'm planning for 2022, what I'm really pushing myself for is to release these collections. And do it all online. I have avoided doing online sales my entire career because no one ever wanted that exact item. It was always a custom order. I love those colors, but I need it to be this shape, whatever.
Mm,
And it was through watching TikTok and Instagram Reels and other business owners that it's like, you know what, just do it. And like I actually don't love custom orders as much as I used to, because I find that working with people is sometimes annoying and the colors that they want are dumb. And I
yeah.
just want to do it a little bit. So it's like I having that confidence in my style and my designs to say like this is what I made, these are the prices, I will ship them tomorrow, just buy the stuff. And but working around like these themes and stuff, and I love mail. I'm like known with my friend circle of always sending snail mail like
Hmm.
crazy.
Yeah.
Actually, when my husband and I were engaged, we sent each other, I was in the UP and he was in the Lower Peninsula, we sent each other over 300 postcards
Oh my god.
in like under 2 years. So we absolutely are like snail mail people over here.
Yeah.
And I love this idea of sending your friends like small handmade pieces of glass. So one of my collections is going to be called Sending Sunshine, and they're going to be little sun catchers that are going to be fairly affordable, shipping and like gift wrapping included and things like that, so that you can just like your friend in San Francisco is having an awful day. Let's just ship them this like adorable thing that's handmade and lovely, and like I have okay handwriting, and like I'll
Mhm.
write your little message to your friend and get that out in the mail to like brighten someone's day. And I think that's really like where my, I guess that is kind of a story, is I really want to like brighten people's days via packages.
Yeah.
And so I've been working really hard and asking a lot of questions in EA about printing and customer appreciation stuff, and like little things to add on to make that opening a package that is full of
Mhm.
like packing peanuts and bubble wrap, which is not really all that pretty, to make that moment still really special for people.
Yeah. Unboxing is really such a art in
Mhm.
itself, right?
Yes.
Small glass making an impact, as it said.
Mhm.
Really good. Okay, well, Alyssa, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience here today?
I'm totally good.
Okay, great, 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 great. We've had such an amazing conversation. I want to thank you again for
Mhm.
taking the time out and continuing to be an amazing and impactful person here in the Accelerate community. I just cannot thank you enough for that. You're the best.
Thank you.
Great, great, great. If you'd like to join the Accelerate Collective and attend future campfires, visit accelerateamerica.com/join and check out our future guest at accelerateamerica.com/campfire. Take care.